A century after the last sunrise, the world had changed its geometry. Gravity still pointed downward, but the instinctive sense of up and down had gone vague, as if citizens no longer trusted the concept of a sky they had never seen. People lived inside the planet now, suspended around luminous shafts of magma-lit stone. Streets spiraled like shells, balconies clung to volcanic ribs, and steam elevators whisked commuters past corridors of glimmering obsidian. Ashkill Vault, one of the tallest of the subterranean metropoles, was anchored in what had once been Iceland. Its founders had lowered the first platforms while the ocean still boiled from the shock of the Great Eclipse, that sudden veil that slid across the sun and never moved again. In the generations since, children learned of the surface the way earlier eras had learned of heaven mythically, wistfully, with enough precision to ache but never enough to act. At least that was what the director had intended. Controlled nostalgia, manageable grief. Lys Ariadne served the directorate as an archivist, entrusted with a key to the Hall of Memories. My job was to keep alive every verified detail of the old world and bury every uncertain rumor. If a testimony lacked corroboration, protocol demanded it be quarantined, sealed in a deep data store no sharper than the directorate feared unvetted hope. It produced zealotry, and zealotry imperiled furnaces, turbines, and lives. On the morning that changed everything, I was parsing a box of confiscated surface maps when Marshal Dragon tipped his hat through my doorway. He was in full field armor, a matte black shell, humming too softly to hear, too loudly to forget, and he carried an authorization scroll stamped crimson. "Pack a surface kit," he said. "You're joining an escort." "Excuse me?" "Council wants an archivist. Donners stole a freight crawler 2 levels up. They're headed to where the sun was." The Donners, I thought, that messy bouquet of cults that kept blooming in the dark. They believed the sky could be reignited if only humanity made a worthy offering. Some vowed to build a pyre of turbine cores. Others swore the eclipse was a curtain that needed to be burned away with concentrated light. Every month they held clandestine vigils, raising braziers toward the rock ceiling, whispering about signals and silver contraptions waiting on the dead crust. "I'm no negotiator," I told Dragan. "You're a historian," he replied. "They worship history." We took the central funicular up the pillar, past the school rings and the agricultural terraces, where glow moss rippled like frozen seas. At Transit Gate 8 we met the rest of the team. 4 sentinels, 2 engineers, and a lanky mediator named Finch. Behind them loomed the elevator cage that rose in stages through 5 kilometers of basalt until it kissed the ruin of the surface. While the winches strained and the walls blurred, Finch briefed us with crisp nerves. The Donners had commandeered 3 reactor cores, glowing cylinders of thorium salt slated for replacement. Their caravan crawled along the ancient fissure that once was Thinkadlir National Park. If they reached the caldera aperture, they could slot those cores into the ignition chamber of whatever scrap-built altar they'd cobbled together. "What happens if they fire it?" I asked. Finch shrugged. "Maybe nothing. Maybe the cores breach. Maybe the chamber erupts and coughs a plume up the vents. Either way, the fuel is irreplaceable." The cage latched at the mid-surface airlock, where the last real doors of our civilization were welded. Beyond lay the corridor, a straight, reinforced tunnel that stabbed toward a hatch Dragan called the Skin. I had never been beyond the Skin. Few had. Its aperture was small enough to keep heat loss tolerable, large enough to drive a crawler. We emerged at dusk that never ended, into air thin, still, and bitter. Rock plains stretched beneath a ceiling of black cloud fused to the horizon. The sun was up there, so the textbooks claimed, yet everything was washed in charcoal. Our helmet lamps threw cones of pallid gold that died 10 meters out, as if embarrassed to trespass where light didn't belong. The crawler tracks were easy to follow. Tread marks pressed into ash, weaving between jutting blades of glassified sand, not glass ice, the sensor flagged, ice sculpted by decades of near-vacuum chill. It crackled under our boots like brittle bells. 2 hours on foot and we saw them. A caravan of 3 flatbed crawlers parked at the rim of a man-made pit. Figures clustered around a scaffold of latticed metal, all aimed at a mirrored dish the size of a dirigible hull. Flood lamps ringed the pit, feeding on what must have been precious batteries. Flood lamps ringed the pit, feeding on what must have been precious battery. Their beams licked the mirror, bounced upward, and fizzled against the curtain overhead. We raised magnifiers. The dish was pocked, soldered from fragments of skyscraper windows and satellite husks. At its throat hung the ignition chamber, a hollow cage that yearned for fuel rods like an empty jaw. 2 dawners were draped across the top, welding harnesses sparking. Others prayed below, kneeling on snowless ash. Finch toggled his loudhailer. "This is Marshal Command speaking. Stand down, return the cores. You are endangering." A burst of rail fire stitched the ground near his feet. We scattered behind basalt boulders, comms erupting in shouts. They had scavenged coil rifles, relics of the catastrophe war. Dragon motioned 2 sentinels to flank. I hugged my recorder to my chest, heart drumming like a jackhammer, thinking, "Don't die on your first skywalk." A voice boomed over their improvised amplifier, female and fervent. "We come not to surrender, but to restore. You, who hide in the womb of the world, have forgotten the covenant of dawn." Dragon pinged me. "Archivist, that's Isla Vate. Donner High Priestess. She loves scripture. Get her talking." I peeked over the rock, toggled my mic. "High Priestess Isla, I am Lyce Ariadne of the Hall of Memories. I preserve all covenants. Tell me yours." Silence. Then, "Step forward alone." Before Dragon could veto, I holstered my recorder and walked. My visor displayed her approaching silhouette. Tall, hair plaited with copper wire, eyes shimmering with manganese dust. A Donner sign of consecration. Around us, the surface wind moaned softly, like a forgotten door. "Archivist," she greeted. "Do your annals recall the Song of Fusion, the 22nd Century Solar Harvester project?" I offered. She smiled. "They built orbital mirrors once. They will again. We Donners have found an array, mothballed but intact, waiting in Lagrange like a lantern. All it needs is a spark." She gestured at the dish, our beacon. I had read rumors about Project Naman 10, enormous heliostats, launched during the energy crisis, parked in safe drift when the war began. No one had resources to fetch them later, and after the eclipse they were presumed lost. Yet myths said they endured. Mirrors polished by vacuum, guardians of a sun nobody saw. "Your spark could blow this crater apart," I said. "Even if you succeed, you'll pierce the mantle vents that feed our cities." "Then let them crumple," Isla whispered. "Stone can be rebuilt. We seek the day." Her zeal was incandescent. I wondered what light had birthed it. While we spoke, Donners rolled the first reactor core on groaning tethers. Finch's timer pinged in my ear. They needed 16 minutes to prime. We had 10. Dragon's plan crackled across the secure channel, lobbing flashbang drones into the pit, grabbing the cores, retreating. But the dish was a fragile colossus. One concussive tremor could shatter it. Maybe vent the thorium. I looked at Isla, then at the dish, then at the crouched silhouettes of my team. "If I can provide proof the mirrors are gone," I said, "will you stand down?" She studied me with pity. "The whole sky says otherwise. It merely waits to be lit." So negotiation was dust. I turned, flicked my comm to Broadwave, and addressed every soldier and cultist. "Listen. The eclipse is not a curtain. It's a mantle of particulate carbon nanotubes seeded by the catastrophe war, a self-replicating shield deployed to scorch rival satellites. It absorbs 79% of high-frequency light. Burn it hotter, it grows thicker. Ignite it, you torch the oxygen we have left." I quoted declassified research, casualties, the trajectory of the shading swarm. The facts, poured like lava, slow and unstoppable. Engineers on both sides listened. Some Donners wavered, but Isla's belief was iron. Lies from burrowers, their fear of the sky blinds them. She waved and gunfire erupted. It was brief, a duel of strobing arcs, sentinel rounds, screams, and when the haze cleared, Finch was bleeding out against a crawler wheel. Dragon's armor smoked. The Donners had lost 2. Yet at the mirror's throat, the first core slid into place. I scrambled backward, brain racing. The dish pointed roughly southwest, toward the Atlantic's old void. At maximum output, the thorium flash would fire a column of 40,000 Kelvin. If it punched through the nanoshroud, perhaps it would signal Gnomon. If it didn't, it would splatter molten mirror across kilometers. Either outcome spelled death. My recorder pinged low battery. Stupid detail, but the chime gave me an idea. I hailed Dragon privately. Can we rig the Sentinel capacitors to dump charge into the dish framework? You want to short it? I want to give the Dawners their flash without the reactor. He relayed to the engineers, who muttered equations while bullets hissed overhead. Verdict, maybe possible. The dish's struts were conductive. A synchronized discharge could produce a blinding flare. A visible beacon, but harmless. We'd fry our suits, maybe stun ourselves, but no breach. Need 60 seconds at the Nexus hub, an engineer said. Problem. That hub was 30 meters up the scaffold, guarded by snipers. Dragon eyed me. Archivist, your turn for zealotry. I walked again into the open, arms raised. Isla, you demand a spark. Let me bless the core with history. Let me inscribe the names of every child who never saw dawn, so the sun will remember them. She hesitated. Sympathy grew where armor failed. Shield wouldn't cease fire and granted me path. 2 sentinels came, disguised as scribe escorts, packs bulging with capacitor leads. We climbed the scaffold, hearts banging. Up close, the dish was magnificent. A mosaic of angles, every shard etched with prayers. The core sat within a socket ring, its shield doors still open as technicians sealed couplings. I unrolled a scroll, began reading fabricated vespers aloud, loud enough to cloak the engineer's work. They clamped cables, armed auto-dischargers, and synced timers to our suit chronos. 20 seconds. From the corner of my eye, I saw a Donner boy, maybe 15, staring at me with desperate hope. I thought of the textbooks I'd safeguarded, the fossils of seasons, the laughter of meadows. Was there cruelty in denying them even the illusion of sunrise? But illusions that kill are luxuries of the dead. 10 seconds. Dragon's voice. Extraction impossible. Jump when it pops. I concluded my invented litany. May the sky record our yearning. Then I pressed my palm to the core casing AQ. The sentinels triggered. White fire erupted across the scaffold. A dome of silent lightning. Circuits screamed, metals howled. We hurled ourselves into space. I felt the charge crawl over my suit, bite through, kiss my skin. Blackness swallowed sound. When vision returned, I was on my back in powdery ash. Above me the mirror glowed cherry, heat shattered but holding. The core was intact, its control rods slammed shut by emergency systems. Around the pit, Dawners staggered, blinded but breathing. Sentinels rose, likewise stunned. No one had died in the blast. The sky, though, had changed. For the first time in living memory, faint color shimmered within the smothering veil. A bruise of violet, a wound of ember, like auroras glimpsed through smog. The capacitor flare had jolted the nanotube swarm, agitating charge differentials, coaxing a subtle translucence, not dawn, yet not total dark, a middle shade. Aisla crawled toward me, tears carving soot on her cheeks. "You see?" it answered. "It was a trick of plasma," I whispered. But I looked up, and a thread of guilt did glimmer. My words tasted hollow. We arrested the remaining cultists, a quiet, embarrassed affair. But the Directorate's story could not be so simple. They faced an inconvenient miracle. If a prank spark could paint the sky, what could orchestrated effort do? Could the shroud be peeled, dimmed, parted? Did we dare? Weeks passed. Engineers studied recordings, concluded that rapid electrostatic pulses had reoriented local swarms, thinning their density by almost 3%. The effect would fade, yet it proved the veil could be sculpted. Debate ignited like oil. Some argued for cautious experimentation. Others warned that agitating the shield might shower micro-shrapnel on the vaults. Deep below, Dissent blossomed anew. Donners in prison became martyrs, their aborted beacon a prophetic omen. Citizens who had never joined a sect began humming hymns anyway, trading dawn-colored scarves, stenciling sunglyphs on tram walls. Hope, once illegal, had mutated into contagion. The directorate summoned me. I expected rebuke. Instead, they asked for counsel. "You have seen the cult's heart," Counselor Solis said. "How do we govern a yearning too large for stone?" I thought of the boy by the scaffold, of Isla's trembling faith, of Finch gasping his last while the sky remained mute. "You don't govern yearning," I said. "You shepherd it. Give them a safer horizon." So an unlikely alliance formed. Pragmatists, zealots, and historians. We would send instruments to the surface vents, map the shroud's thickness, devise low-yield plasma fountains to chisel windows kilometers wide, minutes long, through which sunlight, unfiltered, might kiss Earth once more. Isla Vate, sentenced to life, was offered commutation if she joined the research. She accepted with suspicious humility. Dragan became chief of surface security. As for me, I left the hall, renounced the custodian's creed of suppression, and stepped onto the first science convoy bound topside. We ride now in a new dawn, literal and fragile. Our furnaces still glow beneath us, veins of forged flame that keep the undercities alive, but overhead, small circles of blue burn through curtains of soot, shifting like eclipsed moons. Within those windows, the sun is a stranger, pale, thin, but undeniable. Children gather under the rays, faces peeling in astonishment, eyes squeezed against brilliance their species almost forgot how to bear. Some citizens fear this tampering, others see salvation. Both are right. We live in the hinge between hearth and horizon, stone womb below, hungry sky above. Coulter Council, Donner or Burrower, we have learned a lesson truer than any chronicle I once curated. Light cannot be hoarded or outlawed. It will leak through cracks, seep into lullabies, flare inside the sternest armor. Will we ever clear the veil completely? I do not know. But I believe in the pursuit, no longer as archivist, but as participant. For I have watched a city forged in magma dared to open itself to the chill vastness it had spent a century fleeing. I have seen zealotry harnessed rather than crushed, sorrow curated into momentum, myths coaxed into prototypes. One day the sky may blaze as it did for our ancestors, or perhaps it will remain a patchwork quilt of portals stitched by science and desire. Either way, when future historians unspool this chapter, may they note that the first ember was not a reactor core or a mirror shard, but an argument beneath a dead horizon. That to remember the past fully is to refuse its prison, and that an archivist with a handful of lies can sometimes make room for a larger truth.